Like you never
Cool.
know, like what's Czech like with the game, the Beat
Beat
Saber.
Saber, Beat Saber. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's I didn't know that actually. I mean, I haven't really since I before I met you, I really didn't know anything about Czech Republic. I mean, I knew it was a country, and I didn't really know anyone from the Czech Republic. I don't think ever before. So it's pretty neat when you kind of makes your world smaller when you kind of realize all these different important things that come from countries you really never heard much about. So it's I like it.
Especially it's
It
especially
connects us.
it's especially funny with Czech Republic specifically because we're very small and most people don't think about Czech Republic most of the time. But we're also one of the more
Yeah.
advanced countries, like technologically, and even culturally. We did some interesting stuff historically, and well, not super lately. Super lately, it's a bit of a rough patch. But even
Yeah.
like during the whole communist period when we were Czechoslovakia, which is how most people
Yeah.
still know Czech Republic now. It's like still think it's Czechoslovakia.
Yes.
And it
I
like
I agree.
functionally Slovaks and Czechs are almost the same people anyway. So it's not even completely wrong in that like culturally. But there's like a whole bunch of stuff. Like there were like Nobel laureates in both culture and science. From Czech Republic, there's a lot of development of science and robotics, especially because the word robot is a Czech word.
Oh, really?
From that's one of those things that like many people don't know. Robot was invented by Karel Čapek, which is one of the most, like, essentially the most famous Czech science fiction writer, who was
Huh.
writing around the same time as H.G. Wells
So,
and Aldous Huxley, and it's very much like the same kind of writer. Like if you translate his works into English, they're pretty comparable on every level. And one of those, even in terms of like impact, because like H.G. Wells has like Time Machine, for example, or War of the Worlds.
yeah.
So Karel Čapek wrote Rossum's Universal Robots, which is actually a play, like a theater play. And
Hmm.
he invented the concept of robot, which is derived from robota, which is in Czech language or Slavic languages more broadly, hard labor.
Hmm.
So robot is like, but even in Czech, it's a new word. It's an invented word, the shape of like the specific shape of the word, because Czech is very flexible language, and so you can create very easily create neologisms, like new words from existing roots.
Hmm.
So it's just came up with that word, and it wasn't even him; it was his brother Josef Čapek, who also wrote books and was a painter. And so because he was like didn't know what to call them, like his initial pitch was lopot instead of robot, because funnily enough, lopota is actually means almost the same as robota in Czech. So just switch like L for R and B for P. So it would be much lamer if his brother Josef didn't came up with
Yeah,
robots.
it's pretty fun when you think about how understanding things in multiple languages kind of gives you a different angle on it, right? It gives you a whole different perspective. My wife speaks Japanese. We met over in Japan. I lived there for 2 years, so learning the whole Japanese language was very fun for me too. Just being able to see the world in a whole different way. Like when I started dreaming in Japanese, it definitely was made me feel like I was a different person. Just seeing the world from different angles and
That's cool.
different ways of defining things. So I definitely I hear you, and I know how awesome it is to be able to see the origin, how things develop, how things evolve over time through language and through different ways of understanding things. So I definitely think that's again something we can have more than most other podcasts out there because of the multiculturalism kind of involved here, the different backgrounds, different perspectives. So if we can kind of capitalize on that as much as we can to try
Yeah,
to spread that
that's always
we're all in
good.
this together message.
Yeah, that's always good if you can do something that nobody else is doing, because of something like unique attribute, and it definitely makes sense to use it. Like with the Czech words, do you know which other like two Czech words are in English, very famously in English now, that are originally Czech?
No
One of
idea what.
one of them is golem, because like golem is straight up from myth on like a rabbi in Prague bringing golem to life. That's a
Oh,
whole
okay.
localized Prague
Check word.
legend, essentially, and that's
Cool.
probably the progenitor of the idea of a robot, and that's why it was developed in our literature, because we already had
Huh.
golem, which is like an artificially created life as a servant
Neat.
kind of thing, with like even older, even Christian idea actually originally. And
Awesome.
then also it's all usually related to some sort of Christian thing. The other is pistol,
Really?
because pistol is because we were one of the first countries who developed gun combat, essentially like functional guns. Like it was like Hofnitze is actually one of the kind of gun, which is howitzer. It's like sort of transcribed into other languages, but also
Yeah.
Hofnitze howitzer comes also from Hofnitze from Czech language. So it's like a sort of
Hmm.
like a hand cannon type of original guns, and they just pistol is derived probably from pištela, which is a flute.
Hmm.
So it's like a sort of visual semblance, and also it's whistling when it's when it's firing type thing. So that's why it just sort of
Interesting.
developed into pistol. It's just the funny thing is like it was the one particular Czech kind of Christian group which is called Hussites. Hussite. And I also am christened Czechoslovakian Hussite. It's like a Czech church. So it's like I'm not like very like not like a practicing Christian by any means, but I find it hilarious that the kind of Christian that I
Interesting.
technically am is the coolest one in my opinion. So it's like the original Christians with guns were the Hussites. It's actually
The
why
etymology.
in Czech culture later I think westerns were so popular because this sort
Hmm.
of whole romanticized idea of like warriors with guns and stuff. It's actually culturally very Czech. In that very
Very
particular
cool.
sense. And it was really funny because they won pretty much every fight with back then, like with Pope's armies, because Pope's armies, brought swords to a gunfight. So
Yeah.
they weren't very like their armor didn't help them very much, like the knights on horses, and it was also their leader was Žižka, was the
Hmm.
military leader of the Hussites, and is one of the few military leaders in history, like from the bigger names, like top three, who were undefeated. So it was
Wow.
like many battles his whole life, even like lost first one of his eyes, and he's usually depicted just with one eye, and then even the second eye later, he still wasn't losing battles.
Interesting.
So just also added a lot of like in the Braveheart the movie sort of tactics,
Yeah.
so to make sure like to that the army runs into mud and then gets stuck, or using like wagons as barrier, like just flipping. So essentially, first tanks that you would
Hmm.
have like a wagon, and in the wagon a person with hand cannon. So it's like a mobile cannon
Mobile thing.
platform in the
Very
like
cool.
late Middle Ages still. So imagine being a medieval knight against like first proto tanks. It wasn't probably very fun.
That's awesome. I had no idea. That's really cool. So did
because
they not
because
expand very much? They just kind of defended themselves mostly?
that
Is that
yeah
why they
that
didn't
that's
become
the
so
funny
famous?
thing, like we're so anti-imperialist as a culture
Yeah.
that like we were like resisting an empire successfully. Like eventually the only reason we lost was we betrayed ourselves, because at that
Mm.
point in time only like Czechs with guns could defeat Czechs with guns. So
Yeah.
that's but our like cultural weakness
Yeah,
is like there will always
they
be some
stole
sort
they
of
stole your technology, right? They stole your ideas and they use them against you
pretty
eventually.
pretty much, but also that's just like Czech people eventually somebody will betray each other. That's a bit of a
Yeah.
like a inbuilt weakness, even though we like technologically like completely like leaped over the
Hmm.
adversary and used advance in technology to defeat them technologically,
Wow.
essentially, even in the Middle Ages. But then it was very much just like, just let us have our own version of Christianity, please. Because Hussites are called after Jan Hus, which is like Martin Luther, but before Martin Luther. So it was like one of the even earlier reformers of the church, who was like invited to some sort of like a conference to defend his ideas by Zygmunt, I think was the Sigismund was the emperor back then of the Holy Roman Empire, and so like invited somewhere, and then well they burned him at the stake, even though he got assurances beforehand that he'll be safe. So that miffed,
Yeah.
like that made the Czech Hussites a little bit miffed. So they developed and took the guns and shot the knights for like long enough until the knights left them alone, pretty much. But there was no like
Interesting history.
let's conquer the world. It was just like I think one of the points of contention was the what do you call it? Like when you pay money to the church to forgive your sins, type
Yeah,
thing.
not tithing, but it's like
It's
yeah,
tithe. I
paying
think it's or indulgence, maybe.
indulgences, that's what it
Yeah.
is. Yes.
So
Indulgences.
Jan Hus was one of the first, like before Martin Luther, against indulgences, and that we wanted to both have the like the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, so both the wine and the cookie and the wafer, or what do you call
Yeah,
it?
wafer, bread or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
So when I guess that wasn't how the Catholics did it back then, back here.
Yeah.
So it's just essentially like pretty seems pretty minor. But that was it. Like let's just have our land and our religion and just piss off.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean that's the idea for all of us. If we can just get every country to kind of think like that, and we can work on some things together, like the big global goals we'll have to do together, but then culturally we're not trying to steal or push anything on anybody. We just want everyone to have the freedom to have their own religion, have their own culture, have their own belief system, as long as they're not hurting or imposing on others' belief systems and others' cultures. So I think it's a pretty standard global philosophy that I'm pretty sure all of the UN agrees with in general.